Kenya, a nation renowned for its vibrant culture, rich traditions, and diverse communities, stands at a critical juncture in its history. Known for its economic dynamism and entrepreneurial spirit, Kenya now finds itself navigating a period of profound unrest and uncertainty. The catalyst for this turmoil is the controversial Finance Act 2023, a piece of legislation that has ignited widespread protests and drawn international scrutiny. This act, seen by many as a double-edged sword, aims to address fiscal deficits, but has sparked a wave of discontent across the nation. With its emphasis on austerity measures and tax hikes, the Finance Act has touched a raw nerve among Kenyans already grappling with the rising cost of living. Families are finding it increasingly difficult to make ends meet, and the economic strain is palpable in households across the country. This situation is not unique to Kenya. It reflects a deeper struggle playing out across the African continent. Many nations are facing similar challenges as they strive to balance economic growth with social equity. Developing nations like Kenya are caught between the need for economic growth and the pressure to address social inequalities. The Finance Act 2023, while intended to address fiscal challenges, has inadvertently exposed these fault lines, raising questions about economic justice and the role of government in citizens' lives. The Finance Act 2023, while intended to address fiscal challenges, has inadvertently exposed these fault lines, raising questions about economic justice and the role of government in citizens' lives. The streets of Nairobi and other major cities have become battlegrounds where demonstrators clash with authorities, demanding economic reforms and greater accountability. At the heart of this crisis is a fundamental disconnect between the aspirations of a young and ambitious population and the government's ability to meet their needs. The youth, who make up a significant portion of the population, are particularly vocal, demanding jobs, better education, and a more transparent government. Kenya's future hinges on its capacity to bridge this divide, fostering an environment where economic growth translates into tangible improvements in the lives of ordinary citizens. The promise of economic prosperity must be felt in the daily lives of the people, from urban centers to rural communities. The path forward demands a delicate balancing act, requiring difficult decisions and a commitment to dialogue and compromise from all stakeholders. Government officials, business leaders, and civil society must come together to find sustainable solutions that address both economic and social challenges. The world is watching as Kenya grapples with these challenges. International observers and global media have turned their attention to the unfolding events, recognizing the significance of Kenya's struggle in the broader context of global economic trends. The outcome of this struggle will have profound implications, not only for Kenya itself, but for the future trajectory of East Africa and the broader African continent. The decisions made today will shape the region's economic and social landscape for years to come, influencing policies and development strategies across the continent. The Finance Act 2023 stands as a lightning rod for discontent in Kenya, its provisions igniting public anger and fueling the flames of protest. Central to the controversy is the Act's introduction of a housing levy, a mandatory contribution that many Kenyans, already struggling to make ends meet, view as an additional burden on their already stretched finances. Adding fuel to the fire is a significant increase in the fuel tax, a measure that has sent shockwaves through the economy, impacting transportation costs and driving up the prices of essential goods and services. This move has been particularly difficult for low-income households, who rely heavily on public transportation and are most vulnerable to price fluctuations. Further exacerbating the situation is the imposition of value-added tax, or VAT, on basic goods, including fuel and food staples. This measure has been met with widespread condemnation, as it disproportionately affects the poor and most vulnerable segments of society, pushing them further into poverty. The cumulative impact of these measures has been profound, eroding the purchasing power of ordinary Kenyans and fueling a sense of desperation and anger. The Finance Act 2023, in its attempt to address fiscal concerns, has inadvertently ignited a social and economic crisis, highlighting the urgent need for more equitable and sustainable solutions. In response to the Finance Act 2024, Kenyans have taken to the streets in unprecedented numbers, their voices echoing with frustration and a demand for change. The Finance Act, which introduced new taxes and economic measures, has been seen by many as a burden on the already struggling population. The streets of Nairobi, Mombasa, and other major cities have become the epicenters of these demonstrations, with people from all walks of life joining in solidarity. The protests, widespread and persistent, are a testament to the depth of public anger and a clear signal that the government's current economic policies are not resonating with the needs and aspirations of its people. The discontent is palpable, with citizens expressing their frustration over rising costs of living, unemployment, and what they perceive as the government's failure to address these pressing issues. The Finance Act has become a symbol of the broader economic struggles faced by many Kenyans. From bustling city centers to rural towns, Kenyans from all walks of life have united in their opposition to the act, their chants and placards reflecting a shared sense of injustice and a growing belief that the government is out of touch with the realities faced by ordinary citizens. The unity displayed in these protests is remarkable, with people setting aside their differences to stand together for a common cause. The slogans and messages on the placards highlight the widespread discontent and the urgent need for change. The protests have been largely peaceful, with citizens expressing their grievances through marches, demonstrations, and strikes. The peaceful nature of these protests underscores the determination of the people to bring about change through non-violent means. Families, students, and workers have all taken to the streets, hoping that their collective voice will be heard by those in power. However, there have been reports of clashes between protesters and security forces, raising concerns about the use of excessive force and restrictions on freedom of assembly. These incidents have drawn criticism from human rights organizations and the international community, who have called for restraint and respect for the right to peaceful protest. The clashes have also highlighted the tensions between the government and its citizens, with many calling for a more measured and empathetic response from the authorities. The government's response to the protests has been met with mixed reactions, with some commending efforts to engage in dialogue, while others criticize what they perceive as heavy-handed tactics. The government's attempts to address the concerns of the protesters through dialogue have been seen by some as a positive step. But others remain skeptical, fearing that these efforts may be superficial and not lead to meaningful change. The criticism of the government's tactics has added another layer of complexity to the situation, with calls for greater transparency and accountability. "We are tired of being squeezed," exclaimed one protester, his voice hoarse from days of chanting. His words capture the frustration and exhaustion felt by many who have been participating in the protests. The sense of being squeezed both economically and socially resonates with a large portion of the population who feel that their struggles are being ignored. "The cost of everything is going up, and we are struggling to feed our families," he continued. This sentiment is echoed by countless others who are finding it increasingly difficult to make ends meet. The rising cost of living has put immense pressure on families, with many having to make tough choices just to survive. The economic hardship faced by these families is a driving force behind the protests, as they seek relief and a better future. "The government needs to listen to us," he pleaded. This plea for attention and action is a common refrain among the protesters who feel that their voices are not being heard by those in power. The demand for the government to listen and respond to the needs of its people is at the heart of the protests, with many hoping that their efforts will lead to meaningful change. These sentiments are echoed by many Kenyans who feel that their voices are not being heard. The protests have become a platform for the unheard and marginalized to express their grievances and demand change. The collective cry for justice and reform is a powerful reminder of the resilience and determination of the Kenyan people. As the protests continue, the hope is that the government will take heed of these voices and work towards addressing the underlying issues that have led to this widespread discontent. Looming over Kenya's current crisis is the spectre of the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, a powerful institution whose involvement in the nation's economic affairs is a subject of both hope and apprehension. The IMF, with its vast resources and global influence, has the ability to significantly impact the economic trajectory of countries in need. Its presence in Kenya is a double-edged sword, offering both potential relief and imposing stringent conditions. On the one hand, the IMF has provided Kenya with a much-needed lifeline in the form of a $2.5 billion loan, offering a degree of financial stability during a period of economic turbulence. This loan is not just a financial transaction. It represents a beacon of hope for a nation grappling with economic instability. The funds are intended to stabilize the economy, support essential services, and prevent a deeper financial crisis. This financial assistance has been crucial in shoring up Kenya's foreign exchange reserves and providing the government with some breathing room to address its fiscal challenges. By bolstering these reserves, the IMF loan helps to stabilize the national currency, making it easier for Kenya to engage in international trade and attract foreign investment. Government officials are now better equipped to plan and implement policies aimed at long-term economic recovery. However, the IMF's involvement comes with strings attached, often in the form of strict austerity measures and structural adjustments that can have far-reaching consequences for the country's economy and society. These conditions are designed to ensure that the loan is used effectively and that Kenya can repay its debts. Yet the implementation of these measures often leads to significant public discontent and social unrest. Critics argue that these austerity measures, while aimed at reducing government spending and promoting fiscal discipline, often disproportionately impact the poor and vulnerable, leading to cuts in social programs and public services. The reduction in government spending can result in fewer resources for essential services such as healthcare, education, and social welfare programs, exacerbating the hardships faced by the most vulnerable populations. The IMF's focus on debt reduction and fiscal consolidation, while important, can sometimes come at the expense of much-needed investments in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. These sectors are crucial for the long-term development and prosperity of the nation. Without adequate investment, the country risks stunting its growth and failing to meet the needs of its citizens. The IMF's role in Kenya's economic affairs highlights the complex and often contentious relationship between developing nations and international financial institutions. This relationship is characterized by a delicate balance of power, where the needs and priorities of developing nations must be weighed against the policies and conditions imposed by these powerful institutions. While financial assistance can provide a critical safety net, it is essential that such support is accompanied by a nuanced understanding of local contexts and a commitment to promoting inclusive and sustainable growth that benefits all segments of society. This means not only addressing immediate financial needs, but also investing in long-term development strategies that foster economic resilience and social equity. The ultimate goal should be to create a more balanced and just economic system that empowers all citizens, particularly the most marginalized, to thrive.